For me, Marshall has always been about loud guitar amps and live music. Until now. According to Marshall, the Motif II ANC earbuds deliver front row sound, and as someone who worked in live sound for many years, I have a very good idea, I think, of what they mean. But as mentioned at the start of this video, I am far more familiar with the Marshall that sits behind guitarists on stages. As it turns out, I've been missing out on what they've been doing in the consumer headphone space, in particular when it comes to the earbuds. Marshall is very kindly sponsoring this video, but every single opinion you're about to hear is my own. And they tell us that the latest version of their earbuds features the Marshall signature sound, as always, improved active noise cancelling, better battery life with quick charging, and they're more sustainable. So, there's a lot to get into. The spec list for the Motif II is big and impressive, and again, because there's so many numbers involved, I need to refer to these notes, so bear with me. They have 6mm dynamic drivers in each earbud, and they have a frequency response of 20Hz to 20 kHz. As the name suggests, they do have active noise cancelling, ANC, and transparency mode, which is when you bring the outside world in so you can hear other people, you can hear your surroundings, and you can hear yourself when you're taking telephone calls. When it comes to battery life, we get 30 hours of total playback time with the charging case, and that's 10 more than the previous generation. And if you're wondering, without the case you get 6 hours of continuous playback on a single charge. A full recharge takes 1.5 hours via USB-C, and a quick charge of 15 minutes gives you 1 hour of extra playback time. The Motif II also supports Bluetooth LE audio, which improves the streaming range and is particularly useful for watching movies and playing games because it improves the audio sync. These earbuds also work with the Marshall app for a more customized listening experience, which I'll come on to later, and they are more sustainable. And that's because they're made with 70% post-consumer recycled materials, and they have improved battery preservation. You can buy them today and they cost €199, $199 and $179.99 in the UK. But what you care about, and I definitely care about, is how these things sound. If you're not aware, Marshall was started in the 1960s by a guy called Jim Marshall, a bit of a legend, and, well, they know what they're talking about when it comes to sound. And the way they've transferred all of those years of heritage into these tiny little buds is by using something called the Marshall signature sound. And that's basically an EQ setting which has lots of presence, lots of brightness at the top end. It basically sounds, as you might guess, a bit like a guitar amp. But it has the added depth for bass and drums, so you have that bottom end bringing everything together, and it sounds, well, it does sound front row. That whole front row thing, the whole live sounding thing that Marshall are putting into these earbuds is definitely there. Now, I have a headphone killer test track called Breathe Again by Pop Evil. Please go and check it out if you want to see what I'm talking about. And I thought that would be perfect to put these through their paces. And these deal with that track, which is incredibly raucous and overcompressed and just utterly crazy. It sounds terrible on the wrong headphones and the wrong earbuds, but on these, they dealt with it absolutely fantastically. In fact, I'd go as far to say they've dealt with it better than any other pair of earbuds I've tested. Now, that is a very big claim, I know, and it probably makes you worried that these don't cope with other types of music, but they do. I've tried them with classical music, with country music, with pop, EDM, even Lady Gaga singing on her own with a piano on the fantastically produced and beautiful sounding I'll Never Love Again. Sounds fantastic on these. The dynamics, the wide sound stage, that live feeling which doesn't get in the way but just makes the music feel more exciting, all of that stuff goes together to make these sound utterly amazing. And part of the reason I'm gushing about these is because they beat a lot of other earbuds when it comes to price. So if your budget is a bit lower, then spending the money on these doesn't mean you have to sacrifice good sound. And the reason they sound so good is because they're made by Marshall. Marshall, as I mentioned a moment ago, really knows what it's doing. If you don't like that Marshall signature sound, you can tweak the EQ in the Marshall app. It's very easy to do. There's also some presets that you can choose from, and I found that the one that reduces the mid-range suits my listening preference. I quite like that scooped mid-range, and it kind of boosts the bass a little bit and brings up the top end. For me, that worked, but like I say, you can use that app to create your own sound signature. So when it comes to audio, we definitely get that front row sound that Marshall is going for, and they cope with lots of different types of music very well indeed. But what are they like when it comes to active noise cancelling? The noise cancelling on the Motif 2s is really, really good. And again, at this price point, you can very easily buy a pair of active noise cancelling earbuds that are rubbish. In fact, you can spend more than that and have the same problem. So the fact that we are spending a lot less on these compared to some of the competing active noise cancelling earbuds on the market, and you're getting just as good noise cancelling, says a lot about Marshall. They have clearly spent their time on this, and what I like about the noise cancelling is that 1, there's no audible hiss, 2, you don't get that kind of oppressive feel that you sometimes get with noise cancelling, and 3, you can change the amount of noise cancelling in the app. But I've used these to work, I've used them to block out the world while I'm walking down the street or working out in the gym. They do such a good job. If noise cancelling is a massive thing for you, but you want the combination of great sound and fantastic noise cancelling, these are an absolute no-brainer. They have transparency mode as well, which is when you let the world in and you can hear your surroundings. So if you're walking down the street and you want to hear what's going on around you, you can turn that on. If you want to hear people talking to you, you can do that as well. If you want to use these for telephone calls, for which they work very, very well, by the way, the transparency mode is perfect for that as well. And just like the active noise cancelling, the transparency mode makes these a very nice pair of earbuds to live with, which brings me on to design, convenience, and comfort. Design is very subjective, obviously, but I challenge anyone to tell me that these do not look cool. And the best way to describe these is that they look and feel like, unsurprisingly, a guitar amp. If you've ever run your fingers across a Marshall amp before, if you haven't, you need to, trust me, these feel almost identical. It's the material they've used, it's the texture on these stems, everything about it screams, these should be on stage. And that, I don't care what you think, is just biblically cool. But a lovely consequence of this, again just like a guitar amp, is that they feel very well made and incredibly robust. It's also worth noting that the buds are IPX5 water resistant and the case is IPX4 splash proof, so you can take them to the gym and not worry about them, and if it starts raining, it doesn't matter. They're also a stem design, as I mentioned a moment ago, which is my favourite type of earbud, and they are very, very comfy. I've worn them for ages without any discomfort, and they have that feature where when you take them out, the music stops, and when you put them back in, it resumes. And that feature is absent from way too many other earbuds. I'm a big fan of the case as well. If you know me, you know that I'm absolutely obsessed with earbud and headphone cases, and Marshall has got it right. Yes, it is a very familiar design, but it has that same amp aesthetic. So as you run your hand across this, if you close your eyes, it feels like you're on stage and you've just walked past the guitarist's area and you've run your finger across a Marshall amp. Trust me, it's a thing. This case also has wireless charging, which I know is very important to a lot of you, and on the subject of battery life, 30 hours of playback with the case is enough for anyone, and I love the fact a 15-minute charge gives you 1 hour of playback. Again, if you're in a pinch, that is really important, and once again, it makes these very easy to live with. In terms of controls, they use touch controls, which no, are not my favourite type of control for an earbud, but I'm starting to warm to this now, and pretty much every new type of earbud has touch controls. The good news about these is that you don't keep pressing it by mistake. All of this leads me to one very simple conclusion about the Motif 2. It's the price, it's the sound, it's the noise cancelling, it's the comfort, it's all of that heritage that you get from Marshall that makes these unbeatable at this price range. And they feel like a Marshall amp. And trust me, if you love your sound, if you like live music, if you've got an affinity for guitarists and just the whole history of rock music, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. But the amazing thing about the Motif 2s is that they don't limit themselves to that type of music. They absolutely smash anything you throw at them. If you're looking for a fantastic sounding pair of noise cancelling earbuds and you don't want to spend a fortune on them, buy these.